This is R Rats with Team 4545 League analyzing the game between JWB and J Antonio. This event was played in team event number 53 in the second round. Let's have a look, see what happens. Okay, plenty of transpositional possibilities, and what's going to happen remains to be seen. And now it's seen. It's a King's Indian defense. Okay. And usually black will be playing e5, that's the main line, but c5 is also a move. It's less commonly seen. I don't know all the theory on it, but it has a lot of differences between the e5 variation, and a lot of it hinges on this black piece right here on g7. In the other King's Indian, which I've covered in several videos, this piece becomes a problem piece for black. It's never active, it never gets into the game. It just sits there, and finally maybe somehow it gets active in the ending. But here you can see what it has is it has this wonderful long diagonal, and if black can utilize that, black has a very decent game with plenty of prospects. That doesn't mean white doesn't have alternatives of his own. What white will seek to do is eventually play f4 and e5 and try and close that diagonal off. So it's a question of what can black do in the meantime to get his men active. But at the same time, black has one thematic break here, and that's to prepare for b5. He's not close to it yet. A secondary break might be to try for f5 at some point, but he's not close to that either. As a matter of fact, the entire black side remains undeveloped. But while both sides are completing their development, let's just have a look and see what happens. Okay, bishop d7, kind of an unusual move, but I can't really criticize it since it follows the plan of preparing for b5. Okay, so let's just go on. And both sides still have to develop their queen side, which black is now doing a good job of getting done. Okay, now knight d2, the purpose of knight d2 is to play f4. Okay, and now queen c8. This is seemed a little puzzling to me. Let's just go back a second, and before we go any further, let's just try knight c7 here. Okay, now what's white going to do? What white's going to do most likely is play f4, and that doesn't mean he has to play f4, but it's his most likely move. Now black has a myriad of options here. He's not quite ready for b5, but he's close. So suppose he plays a6 here. Now what's white going to do? Well, white might try a4, okay? But black should be okay out of this. He might even be able to play b5 directly. The point being that he'll make a temporary sacrifice of the pawn and come in and collect it later. And if he does this, he gets a lot of activity. Now he doesn't have to play b5. He can still prepare it. Moves like queen e8, but that might allow a5. Same with rook b8, might allow a5. But let's just to show you the idea here, let's just take a look. It's just a temporary pawn sacrifice. Okay, now white's got to deal with this rook on a1, so most likely he's going to trade it. Okay. Now, as I said, black has offered a pawn temporarily. How's white going to take it? If he does take it, he's going to end up with some doubled pawns. Okay, so if he doesn't take it, black is going to maybe take on c4, or even push by, probably take on c4 and get the rook active on the b8 square. So at some point white needs to take. Okay, so let's just go ahead and take with the pawn. That's assuming that white wants to win the pawn. Now black gets rook b8 in, and how's white going to defend that pawn? Well, suddenly you've got doing white what you want. You got him defending. So that's worth something in itself, and really I can't see how white's going to hold on to that pawn at all. Black can just play queen b7, and black has 4 guys on it, and white has 3 and can't really bring another one into the active defense. So now black's going to get a lot of open squares for his pieces and some free development. Meanwhile, white hasn't even completed his development yet. The bishop's still sitting on c1, and the white knights are kind of defensive. They're guarding e4, and one of them's guarding b5. So unless I miss something, this just seems to be a logical plan for black to play. Did white have a tactic to bypass all this? I don't know, but that would have been a little more logical. What black played did have a point, but it doesn't quite follow up the plan he should be trying to implement. And with all this time on the clock, even whether this is book or not, I don't know, with all this time on the clock, black certainly had time to consider it. If he didn't consider it, then it's just owing to moving too quickly. So white goes on with his theme. As I said, he wanted to play f4. And now we see the point of black's queen c8. He wants to trade off light squared bishops. Now in normal King's Indian, black doesn't want to trade that bishop. It's his best piece for attacking. Here, it's kind of in the way on d7, so it may not be a bad idea to get rid of it. But then again, the white pawn setter e4, c4, and d5 are all on white squares, so white shouldn't mind being rid of this piece. Okay, so he goes ahead with e5, which is what he's been aiming for. Now white's got his thematic break in, black doesn't. Okay, so now knight g4, and black is now attacking e5, so white needs to deal with that. There's several ways, knight f3 being one, and I don't know, black's might be okay just to leave that knight there. If white wants to play h3 and weaken himself a little bit on the king side, black can just drop it back into h6 at his leisure. I don't really see a direct tactic that white has here, but black needs to try to coordinate still to get the b5 break in. The problem is, by the time he gets it in, white will have his queen side developed, and he'll be ready to oppose black on any plan that he might be undertaking, as well as, since he's got his own plan going with the center break of e5, white may even shift over to the king side. So at this point, black needs to utilize every tempo he can and generate some activity here. So he didn't play it. Now we finally get the thematic move, knight c7 in, which begins to prepare b5. And then this seems to make sense. You're getting ready more so to play b5. And now I think that might be an error for white if white's going to allow this setup to happen. Okay, white does have his own aims. He's trying to get penetration into the e file, and as we'll see in a moment, he wants to get e6 in. But my question is, what's wrong with just playing a6? Okay, at least it prepares b5, and you need to be ready for that eventuality, because black's going to suffocate here if he just sits on this game. White's just going to build up his position and make it stronger. So, but the problem with this line with playing a6, look at the difference now as opposed to way back a few moves ago. The white queen bishop is out. It couldn't even move before. There was a knight on d2, and the white queen rook is developed. So, and white has his center here that he's wanted, that he didn't quite have back when black first had an opportunity to try this. So it's definitely white's got a little edge here. In the long-term prospects are white's. Even though black is holding on and doesn't have any weaknesses, he's just going to end up getting suffocated here if he makes any imprecise move. So rook e8 seems to be a reactionary move, trying to hold the balance. Black is, I suppose, is just hoping for some wholesale exchanges, take on d6 and then chase the queen away, trade a set of rooks, oppose the other rook, but anyway, white has other plans. He plays e6, and suddenly black is kind of suffocated, as I said. The line of communication between black's kingside and queenside is now the square E8. So what's black going to do? Well, he could retreat the queen and then just push F5 and try to hold on, or he could do what he did in exchange, and it's not all that bad, but it's just that the white position is just so looking so good right now. What can black do to generate anything? He still doesn't have his B5 break in, so like I say, black's just kind of suffocated. Now the queen's off that diagonal. It can't control B5, so black's still a ways away from playing that freeing maneuver, and white just solidifies his position, and I guess black seats some counterplay on E6. That might not be the best strategy, but then again, what should black try? He's missed his best chance for activity already, and that's just a great square for the knight. It's securing E6, and then black goes ahead and puts the knight on F5, which is a very good square. And here I think black just kind of falls apart. What he probably needs to play, well, maybe not just yet. It was okay to do that actually, because his that knight was. Let me just show you. Okay, it was okay to do that because the knight is threatening on F6, and you don't want to have to admit your mistake. But at the same time, it anchors in that pawn on E6. Now, for what it's worth, black now has a queenside pawn majority. Black can generate a passed pawn probably quicker than white can. White has a kingside pawn majority, but it's kind of hard to see how he's... well, you can try for G4 and then F5, but it's with all the black pieces over on the king side, it's kind of hard to see exactly how that pawn become dangerous. Whereas if black ever opens up the queen side, his passed pawn might become dangerous. It might even get down to C3, supported by the bishop on G7. Okay, so this is a perfectly fine move. It drops the knight into a very active square, and now black is trying to attack D5, attack the pawn chain at its base, and white holds on to that. But I think this is the point where black lost thread. Yeah, lost his way. This knight goes here and stays there. It doesn't really do anything. The only thing I can think is he's trying to plan to put it on C7 and generate some counterplay on that pawn. But the white position is just becoming to get too strong here. Probably what black should have played was something like H5, trying to hold white back from playing G4. So just for instance, H5, if white plays H3, preparing G4, black can actually get away with H4 here, and it's hard to see how white's going to go after that H pawn. The first idea I was looking at was to shift the rook over, say, to D1 or C1, and then bring the bishop back, but black has resources. He can go and counterattack that knight on G5 with moves like bishop F6 and be taking it off, and G5 becomes a weakness. But anyway, it's kind of long and involved. Let me just show you what happened. Knight B5, and then this powerful move G4 just puts black on the defensive, and he's not able to recover. Maybe he should have admitted his mistake and gone back to F8. That at least keeps the bishop active. But then F5 comes in, and suddenly black is just strangled. He just can't do much. And here I think black overreacted, but it's hard to find a plan. He's just so tied up. He just can't do much. So he gave up the exchange, but this just gives up material, and black still has no compensation for it. None of his pieces are working together. The knight needs to go back to D4, but then again, white's got his pawn majority rolling, and now there's threats against the king side. Now it looks like black's going to have to trade off some material and even lose some. And now, sure enough, there goes another pawn. Now white has 3 passed pawns on the king side, and black really has nothing to show for it. The only compensation he has a knight that white can't counter, and he has a queenside pawn majority, which he still hasn't even started moving. he's made 2 pawn moves on the queen side the entire game, and those were way back in the first few moves. So black is hurting for certain. And white comes up with a fairly nice finish. He's just got too much going here. And finally the knight just goes and attacks the queen, but actually all it does is drive it to a better square. Now the threat is rook f8 check, and winning at everything. And black stops that, but this move just does ends the game, because after that white has mate and won in 2 different ways. Well, very good game by white. Black, you had chances here to make it interesting. Hope everybody learned something from this. I want to thank everyone for their time, and we'll see you next game. Take care.